What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's Mexico Open. Back to a regular individual stroke play event. No real quirks or things to discuss before we jump into this, outside of the fact that this is still a very new event on the PGA Tour. So I'm going to show you the course key stats, but remember that the Mexico Open, this is their national open. I mean, this has been played forever. It goes back to the 30s or 40s, but it did not become a real official PGA Tour event until last year. So only 1 year's worth of PGA Tour data. It was on the PGA Tour Latino America schedule for a couple of years as well. So like Austin Smotherman won this a couple of years ago, but in its current version with this field, with this, I was going to say caliber of field, but we'll talk about that in just a second. It's only been 1 year, 2022. So keep that in mind when I show you everything. Let's jump into it. This is the course key stats model on RickRunGood.com. Everything you see is going to be from my website. And again, caution you, only 1 year worth of data. You could basically throw this out the window. I'll be pretty honest with you here. Now, the eye test around this place is that it's on paper pretty long and going to likely play even longer than the 7,400 yards that it's listed on the scorecard. And the reasons for that is a couple of things. Usually when we go to Mexico and we go to Chapultepec, we're at super high altitude, not necessarily the case here at Vidanta Vallarta. The other thing is it is paspalum everywhere, right? Tee through green. You usually don't get as much rollout in the fairways there. So I think this is going to play pretty long. And when you look at the scorecard and you look at how those yards are distributed, you see a lot of it on just like long par fours, right? So I think while driving distance is not going to be a requirement, I think it is certainly a benefit. Being able to hit your long irons very well, and Andy has his course breakdown on RickRunGood.com right now. The around the green areas, not super penal. So if you are hitting those long irons into greens, being able to get up and down is certainly going to be easier for the vast majority of the field. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We'll talk a lot about paspalum greens. You have to remember, paspalum is its own animal, and the fact that we don't usually get shot link data or the strokes gain data from places that have this paspalum green. We'll talk about it, but we'll save that for a little bit. Let's just go to the cheat sheet right now. All right, here he is, the man at the top, Jon Rahm, $12,000. Only two golfers over $10,000. Jon Rahm, Tony Finau. Rahm is $12,000, Tony Finau is $10,700. So what do we know about this? From the outright market, you look and you see Jon Rahm is plus 280. He was plus 350 at this event last year when he won it. He has now solidified himself as the number one player in the world. He's won 7 times since this event last year worldwide. Just obviously playing much better now than he was leading into that event. The salaries on DraftKings do not usually reflect the big favorites well enough. So let me show you this for an example. My argument being that Rahm could probably be much more expensive than $12,000 if they were trying to do a better job of correlating this to the betting market. So just a couple of weeks ago, I guess a couple months ago at this point, or last month, Jon Rahm was 11,800 at the Players Championship. The Players Championship, the deepest field in golf, where he's obviously one of the favorites, but there's 10 or 12 guys that are going to be in the mix, the best of the best of the best. He is $200 more expensive here in Mexico, where basically him and Tony Finau are the only two top 50 players here. When you look at the power rankings, Jon Rahm is head and shoulders above the rest of this field. He's gaining nearly 2.5 strokes per round over his last 36. To put that into perspective, Michael Kammer, let me find Aaron Rai here. Aaron Rai is the 20th, or excuse me, Steven Yeager is the 20th best player in this field. He's getting a half a stroke per round. So the 20th best player in the field, that's obviously very good. Jon Rahm is 5 times better than the 20th best player in the field over the last 36 rounds. It's obviously not a perfect way to look at that, but I'm trying to give you a little bit of an example here. So $12,000 basically being the cap, you could argue that Rahm should in theory be much more expensive here. Now, Do I need to sell you on Jon Rahm's ability? Probably not, right? He's fresh off the Masters win. He won at Riviera. He's been dominating. He's the front runner for Player of the Year. He's been phenomenal. We got the bounce back year that we were looking for after a pretty disappointing 2022. If you go back and look at his win from here last year, he was 11,300. And again, he's playing much better now. We do have the strokes gain numbers from this event. He gained 5.5 off the tee, 8 in the ball striking categories, 10.2 from tee to green, and he won this event by, I think it was 4 strokes, won it pretty handily. So I think game theory will be a different conversation, right? When we get to Wednesday for the live chat, 3 p.m. Eastern time on the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, we'll have an idea of what the projected ownership is going to be, and maybe it's Jon Rahm at 50%. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like, but my argument right now being $12,000 is probably too cheap for Jon Rahm. We'll see how it fits into some builds later, how it influences everything else, and we'll look at the game theory aspect, but I do not think paying $12,000 for Jon Rahm is all that bad. Tony Finau is the only other golfer in the $10,000 range. He's $10,700. And I think if you have to split hairs at the top of the board, Tony Finau ends up being the odd man out a little bit. So I think there's a chance that Finau's C+ game is better than the vast majority of this field here. But I do want to point out a couple of things that I think are noteworthy. And I don't think they're red flags, but they're like pink flags, things that we should consider. So he's Finau, has lost strokes off the tee in 4 straight starts. He has never done that before in his career. They're not big losses, but they are losses. But compared to what you normally get out of him when he's playing his best, which are big gains off the tee, it's a little bit concerning. The approach play, elite. No problem with that whatsoever. The around the green and the short game, he's lost it a little bit. Right? You know, the putter has disappointed him in 3 of his last 5. He's lost strokes. That is something that when he got hot with those back-to-back wins and then ran that into the, basically the Farmers Insurance Open, he was gaining a stroke per round with the putter. Now he's kind of losing a stroke per round, or maybe a little bit better than that. But that is generally a little bit of a concern. So again, Finau's B+ game, C+ game is going to be pretty darn good. But this is not the best we've seen him play pretty easily, right? I think it's pretty easy to make that argument. The 9K range got a little more interesting, or a little less strong, a little weaker this morning, because like 30 seconds after the pricing came out, Davis Riley and Nick Hardy withdrew from this event. Now, actually, I think they might have withdrawn a little bit earlier because Nick Hardy never made it into this field in terms of the salaries, but Davis Riley did, and he was 9,900, I believe. So he was the 3rd most expensive player in this field. Well, now that honor goes to Wyndham Clark. If you've been following this channel at all, or anything that I do, you are very well aware of what Wyndham Clark has been doing, which is 13 or 14 consecutive cuts made. He hasn't missed a cut since Las Vegas. He's got 3 top 6 finishes in his last 4 starts, including the Zurich Classic with Bo Hostler, where they were leaders after 18, 36, 54. Were not able to close it out, finished 3rd there. But as an individual, Wyndham Clark's been phenomenal. Now, you look at a couple of items here. You look at the recent form of Wyndham Clark, where he has been an elite approach player, an elite ball striker. And then you look at kind of the longer term stuff for Wyndham Clark, and you think that this sets up pretty well for him at Vidanta Vallarta, because he is one of the longest hitters that we have on the PGA Tour. Elite club head speed, 6th in club head speed. Driving distance on all drives is 22nd in this field. It's much, much better than that. You look at his other strengths, his ability to hit his long irons comes into play here. Top 60 from basically 200 plus. He's also pretty darn good with his wedges. So when he gets to that, there's like a short par 4 around this place. I don't know. You look at just the ability to kind of fill it up a little bit, and the fact that he's been a much better putter this season than at basically any other point in his career. This is a very well-deserved pricing for him. The last 36 rounds, Wyndham Clark's been better than Tony Finau has been. It's very close, 1.64 to 1.58, but it's true. So Wyndham Clark, well deserving of being taken seriously. Maybe now that he's been in the mix a couple of times in his last handful of starts, you got to knock on the door a couple of times before it opens for you. It feels like we are on the verge of a Wyndham Clark breakthrough. Speaking of golfers looking for a breakthrough, how about Patrick Rodgers here at $9,300? And This is probably where we can have the PrizePicks conversation, but let me just show you what Patrick Rodgers has been up to. Was in a little bit of a slump earlier this year. Did he break out of it with a fifth place finish at the Texas Open? It appears he did. He gained 7.8 strokes ball striking there. Then he followed it up with a T19 at the RBC Heritage where he gained 6.2 strokes ball striking. So that's 14 strokes gained ball striking over the course of his last 8 rounds. Also a positive around the green during that stretch. Also positive with the putter during that stretch. The thing about PrizePicks, which could be the title of a movie. So let's go to the Holy Grail here. Let's go back to the start of, I don't know what you want to do, the start of 2020. We will go to more filters and we'll just click on PrizePicks. This is a strain of grass that is salt tolerant and also does well in warm weather situations. So you're going to see it a lot in Bermuda and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Mexico and coastal places, right? So it's also a blade of grass that is wider and generally has to run a little bit slower. It tends to help poor putters. Now, the thing also about PrizePicks, because it is in Bermuda and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, we don't usually have the shot length data for it. So we don't usually get the strokes gained putting numbers. So what I've done, and you'll see this in my newsletter for this week, is I've taken everybody's baseline of non-PrizePicks courses, and then I've compared it to just the results on PrizePicks and guys that have at least 16 rounds played on it. And we're just looking for the biggest differences. Now, you could attribute it to randomness, to luck. I think it's fair to attribute some percentage of it to the difference in putting surfaces, right? Because we don't have the strokes gained putting numbers, but we can use the strokes gained total numbers. And what you'll find is that Patrick Rodgers on PrizePicks, did I not click that filter? Maybe I did not. Is one of the better players, okay? One of the biggest differences that you are going to see. He's got 32 rounds on it, which is, 8 starts. He's missed, or I guess it's 9 starts. He's missed 2 cuts. He's got a 10th place finish at this event last year and a handful of other top 25s or top 20s, Mayakoba, Corrales, Punta Cana. You're going to see that he's one of the bigger gainers compared to his own baseline. So when you combine that with his strengths, his recent form coming in, I think he's a pretty decent opportunity at $9,300. This field, if I haven't mentioned it yet, is incredibly weak, right? You have Jon Rahm, you have Tony Finau, and not a lot else, right? So I think we've got to be willing to embrace the chaos a little bit. We've got to be willing to embrace some guys in their 100-round baselines, even if they're not playing all that well. If you want to look at the mold of guys, despite having anything resembling good recent form, Taylor Pendrith would be the mold, right? A bomber who hits his long irons well, who can't putt on a golf course that should reward distance and de-emphasize putting. Filled it up last week at the Zurich Classic with his partner. They finished T13. Maybe that's the spark he needs, right? Seeing a lot of putts go in, seeing a lot of circles on the scorecard. Maybe that's the spark he needs. And his 100-round baseline, I'm certain, I could show you, I'm certain is better than like a lot of the players in the field. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, here you go. 100-round baseline, PGA Tour rounds only. Actually, I guess I've got to include some. I got to include some minimums here because some guys who play on the European Tour are going to get knocked for this. There we go. So 80 minimum rounds on the PGA Tour, but I'm looking at their 100 rounds overall, just so we don't rule out Jon Rahm, for example. Taylor Pendrith is the 8th best player in this field. So you've got Finau, Rahm, Wyndham Clark, Patrick Rodgers, Andrew Putnam, Stephen Yeager, Mav McNealy, Taylor Pendrith, and of the guys ahead of him, like McNealy, Yeager, Putnam, this is like a way better setup for Taylor Pendrith than those guys. You also saw Patrick Rodgers is in there as well. So, I mean, I think these are viable flyers in the 9K range. Obviously, Rodgers has been playing much better than Pendrith has. But if we get to Wednesday and we see that Patrick Rodgers is 25% owned, projected, and Pendrith is 12, that's a very easy pivot to make later in the week. The 8K range, and boy, did this get ugly pretty quick. Actually, this isn't that bad. So, all right, let's talk about this. So Aaron Rai, someone else we've been following for quite some time. He's $8,900 and continues to do the things that we want to see him do. He's not particularly long off the tee. I'll get you his distance numbers here. Yeah, 132nd in driving distance. He's very, very accurate off the tee, though. Top 10 in both driving accuracy and distance from edge of fairway. But he's a really, really good ball striker. And what does he struggle to do? He struggles to putt. Again, if we're building this narrative that you've got to be able to hit it well, and you've got to be able to, and hopefully PrizePicks is going to equal some things out for you on the putting surfaces. That's all good news. He's only missed one cut since the American Express. It was the Honda Classic. And you look at the ball striking numbers. This is good to see. He played well last week with David Lipsky. They had another good run at it at the Zurich Classic. He continues to play great golf. He finished 24th here last year. Emiliano Grillo. So if we go back to the Holy Grail, you're going to see Grillo's name come up here on the PrizePicks stuff as well. Even if we go back a little bit further, 2019, he's got 40 rounds on PrizePicks, which is basically the most of anybody, one of the top numbers, and he's gaining a stroke and a half per round. It is by far the best of anybody with a sample size that he has. And that includes this event last year where he finished T33. He's got a T6 in Punta Cana, a T8 at Mayakoba, a T3 in Puerto Rico. So it's not even just one golf course. It's not like he went to El Camaleon and had 5 top 10 finishes, and that accounts for all of his PrizePicks strokes gained. That's not the case here. He's doing it at a bunch of different golf courses, which again, it leads you to believe he's putting better on this surface. There's something about it that he is jiving with. Worth noting at $8,500. But the guy that I think will capture, we'll see, maybe capture a lot of hearts is going to be Ben Martin. He missed the cut last week. He played with, boy, why am I blanking on who he played with? Chesson Hadley. Missed the cut with Chesson Hadley. They were 8 or 9 under par. That was not good enough to get it done. But before that, as an individual, his last missed cut was Farmers Insurance Open. And we've talked about him a lot, so I won't spend too much time here. Great ball striker. He's decent in the short game. He can get pretty hot with it. We're hopefully going to learn what Ben Martin's upside is, right? I don't know what it is. Is it T8 like he did at Corrales Punta Cana? Is it T5 like he did at the Honda Classic? Or if you get him in a field this week, is it a win? I don't know. We are going to find out. So I do worry a little bit about the upside there, but the game has been really sharp otherwise. And then the last guy here, I've been generally impressed with S.H. Kim since I saw him here in Vegas. He had, on the stat sheet, he looks like a very well-rounded golfer, and he is. He doesn't have any significant holes in his game, doesn't have any flaws. Some weeks he's better in one area than another. He's just a normal, above-average PGA Tour player. But if you watch him, the swing absolutely passes the eye test. The kid, it's such a good swing. 15th at the Texas Open in his last individual start, and then T13 with Benny On at the Zurich Classic last week. So, again, don't know what his upside is. His best finish on the PGA Tour this season is a T4 in Las Vegas, and he's got a bunch of top 25s and stuff like that. But this is a guy that I think will be generally overlooked for Brandon Wu, who finished runner-up here last year, Alex Smalley, who finished 6th. Maybe people go down a little bit further to get access to the guys at the top of the 7K range. So we'll see how the ownership shakes out in this $8,000 range. We can probably just play the ownership game here. Is Steven Yeager tangibly better than Beau Hossler? Is Andrew Putnam tangibly better than Garrick Higo, right? These are questions we're going to be asking all week long, and I'm not sure we have definitive answers, so we might just want to play the game theory game here in the 7K range. Or excuse me, in the 8K range. So here's the 7K range we'll talk about. But before I do that, let me show you the trends tool. So this is basically over the last 35 rounds, how are golfers playing to their own 100 round baseline. So you'll see Dylan Wu back in the field this week. He's $7,500. He is playing a stroke better than himself in the last 35. And the way he's doing it, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, right? I don't like to see that half of it is coming with the putter. Could just mean he's putting out of his mind, but he's got the other half of it is in the ball striking categories. He's a quarter stroke better off the tee. He's a third stroke better on approach. That's a really good sign. Nikolai Højgaard, also basically a stroke per round better than himself, and he's doing it in a much more sustainable, a much better way. Basically all of it and then some is coming from tee to green, just a little bit better in the putting categories. Not too much to worry about there. The other 7K guy that's over his head is Eric Cole. No surprise there. He's gaining most of it via the tee to green category. So this is really good. If we scroll down and look at the breakout candidates, you'll see you want guys in that upper left-hand quadrant, right? You want guys that are hitting it well from tee to green and are putting well. Alvaro Ortiz shows up, but I think that's just a lack of sample size. I wouldn't be too interested in that. But even like John Rahm again is in the correct quadrant. Alex Smalley, Bo Hosser, Jeff Ogilvy, DJ Trahan, Carson Young. These guys are all different prices. But you generally want to be in those categories when you are rocking and rolling through these golfers. We might need to clip this, 'cause I'm not sure I'll say it again. Let me make the case for Luke List, right? And I will not be the first to tell you that Luke List has been horrible since his win at the 2022 Farmers Insurance Open. Horrible. It's been horrible. And I think that if you were ever willing to take a dart throw in a field that is wide open after John Rahm, this might be the spot. So what do we know about Luke List? Bomber, right? Hits it far, still does that, still gains a ton of strokes off the tee. Generally pretty good with his long irons. That's how you win at Torrey Pines, right? You hit a bunch of long irons at Torrey Pines. The putter is probably worse than mine. No, I'm kidding. I would love to putt like Luke List, but by tour standards, he's one of the worst. If this is a golf course that de-emphasizes putting, if it is a golf course that rewards distance, and if it is a field that is incredibly weak, Luke List has real winning upside if that's the case. He might miss the cut. But if there is ever a time to throw a dart on Luke List, it feels like now is that time. He's $7,800. And when you compare him to Joseph Bramlett, would you prefer Joseph Bramlett or Luke List? I'd probably prefer Luke List, right? Both of them are, I don't want to say one-trick ponies, but they're both very, very long off the tee and don't have much in the rest of their game. Both of them are horrible putters, but I think Luke List is the better option there. You know, I'm pretty interested to go back to David Lipsky, right? Lipsky played well with Aaron Rai last week. We've already covered that. He finished 6th here last year. He's playing decent. I don't want to say he's playing decent. He's playing okay coming in, but now he goes back to a place that he's had success. Are people going to just forget about that and write off the 13th place finish last week as a team event, but not realize that he finished 6th at this event last year? We'll see. The other name that I think is interesting is Vincent Norman. Let me show you this. If you ever get a chance to go out and watch Vincent Norman, this kid is a masher. Played his final year. I think he got an extra year of eligibility for the COVID year, and I think he finished it out at Oklahoma, but he was at like a JUCO school or a smaller school before that. And this, I mean, the sound off the club is different for this guy. And you're starting to see a little bit of maybe comfort on the PGA Tour, right? You know, we talk a lot about the learning curve for these guys, and the start to his year was not particularly great. He missed a lot of cuts, but he had a couple of top 40 finishes, a couple top 50 finishes, and now we're starting to see, you know, a little bit of consistency. So his last 5 have been T21 in Puerto Rico, missed the cut at the Valspar. T16 at Punta Cana, missed the cut at the Valero Texas Open. Filled it up at the Zurich Classic T9 last week. I think it was with Matthias Schwab, and he hits it a mile. I mean, just very, very long off the tee. 17th in driving distance on all drives, which in this field is probably top 8, right? Something maybe even better than that. Hits his long irons very well, right? You see, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the proximity buckets, but he's top 80 from 175 to 200, from 200 to 225. He's 102 from 225 to 250, and he's 6 from 250 to 275. There's probably only a couple of shots, but he's, you know, basically inside the top 100 in all 4 of those buckets. In this field, that's probably top 50. And I think he's starting to figure out how he fits on the PGA Tour, and he's only $7,200. So I don't mind that. Like, you look at the guys that are these distance only guys, you know, List, Bramlett. I prefer List over Bramlett. Norman and Cam Champ, similarly priced. I prefer Norman over Cam Champ. You got to make these smaller decisions in this field and embrace a little bit of the unknown. The only other guy that I think is a pretty decent fit for this golf course in the 7K range is $7,000 flat. It's Augusto Nunez. And, you know, you look at his tee to green numbers, and while the rest of his game kind of jumps around a little bit, he gains from tee to green in all but one event dating back to the Houston Open, right? Not huge gains, but they are gains. Then you look at kind of the skill set here. What does he do well? What does he not do well? Well, 27th in club head speed, 42nd in all drives. What does that tell us? Well, first off, I guess it tells us that his smash factor is not that good, right? Or at least not as good as his club head speed. He might not be squaring it off the club face. Or it tells us that he clubs down off the tee in some situations, because we're looking at driving distance on all drives. But I think it's interesting when you have a guy who goes from 27th in club head speed to 42nd in distance of all drives. Still, absolute mover of the golf ball. Doesn't matter where he's hitting it on the club face. And much, much better in this field. Then you look at the buckets. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the buckets, but this stands out when you are basically a pretty darn elite player in 4 straight buckets. So everywhere from 175 to 275, he is 16th, 69th, 5th, 15th. That's pretty elite level stuff, especially when you get yourself into this field. Doesn't putt it very well. Again, we've talked about the PrizePicks situation that we have around here, and you look at what he has done. So he made the cut with Fabian Gomez last week. He finished T37 at the Texas Open, T26 at Punta Cana. He's made, 7 of his last 8 cuts. Pretty good for a guy who's probably going to be 2% owned, something like that. So wouldn't mind Nunez here. 6K range here. Mentioned Austin Smotherman won this event as a PGA Tour Latino America event a couple of years ago. Has not played particularly well coming in, but he's got a 35th at the Players, a 36th at the Valspar, missed a couple of cuts otherwise. Did make the cut at the RBC Heritage. I think the couple of names that stand out to me are Brent Grant. We've talked about him quite a bit. He moves it off the tee in a big way, but he's more accurate than a lot of his peers that also hit it the same distance. He's very, very volatile. So I'll pop up at at Corrales. He missed the cut at the Texas Open and missed the cut at the Zurich with his partner. Very volatile golfer at $6,800. I don't mind him. The other one that I think is interesting here, let me see if I can find him. It's Tano Goya, who is one of there's not a ton of guys in the 6K range who are gaining strokes to the field over their last 36. Goya is, and the other thing that also includes, it includes the Zurich Classic event in which they missed the cut. But they actually gained strokes, so I think they must have missed the cut on the number. 0.75 strokes gained there, but a missed cut. So that's a missed cut there and a missed cut at Valspar. Otherwise, he's been pretty darn good since the American Express. T26 at the American Express, T11 in Puerto Rico, T35 at Punta Cana. Again, I'm pointing out some of these tropical PrizePicks green golf courses, and then has just made the cut otherwise. Before we move on, what I will do is I want to show you some of the small sample size guys, especially when we go to an event like this, you get some sponsors exemptions for guys that you might not have necessarily heard about, and they show up on small sample sizes in strokes gained total. You're like, who are these guys? So let's just look at Cristobal del Solar. So we'll pull him up here real quick, and I don't really know what we're getting into, but I think it's worth just showing you here. So let's see. Missed the cut at the Korn Ferry Tour event last week. Finished 70th at the Korn Ferry Tour event the week prior to that. 2 weeks prior to that, so he's playing on the Korn Ferry. T10. Okay, so he went T13, T10, 70th, missed cut in his last 4. That's his first missed cut of the Korn Ferry Tour season. He is from Argentina, I believe, because I know somebody's going to be, or from Chile maybe. Somebody's gonna be like, oh, you want these guys that are who's the best Mexican player who's played this course 1,000 times, right? That's always something that pops up here. And then I thought there was one other name I wanted to dive into. I think it was Alejandro Tosti, I believe. So let me go here and see what he's been up to. Yeah. Alejandro. Okay, yeah. So 22nd at this Korn Ferry Tour event last week. Now, I don't know if you guys have been following along with this. There was Shuttlegate. So Monday Q Info, Ryan French has been following this. There was, I think it was last week, these guys got a 2-stroke penalty for taking a golf court shuttle when they shouldn't have, which is absolutely insane. So whatever, if Alejandro gained 5.5 strokes last week, He probably actually gained 7.5. So he probably would have finished better than T22. So his last 3 starts, T22 asterisks, T10 the Veritex Bank Championship, T25 the Club Car Championship. So he's playing better golf on the Korn Ferry than maybe some of his peers are. And probably not as good as even these numbers, or probably even better than these numbers suggest, which is an absolutely wild thing to say. But that's where we're at. All right, let me run a model here. And I'll get a little freaky with this. This is the custom model, RickRunGood.com. I might have to adjust my screen so that you can see it fully. Give me 1 second. Okay, that should be better. So let's do a couple of things here. Okay, so what you can do is you apply weights and then you get your best players, right, based on anything that you want. So let us remove these weights and let's go with driving distance for 15. Let's go with, we'll do that long iron play. Now, again, I don't love the buckets, but if you have a couple of buckets in a row, let's do it. So let's do 150 to 175, 175 to 200, 200 to 225. And we will put 6 on each one of them. So it'll be 18 weights on those approach buckets. And we will also put 5 on just strokes gained approach last 36 rounds, right? So that we can cover the other buckets as well. And we'll double count a little bit of that, but that's okay. Putting in around the green, I don't particularly care about. We could do course history, but then you run into a situation where, we only have 1 round of data. We could do long courses, strokes gained long courses. Let's put 10 there. A lot of different ways to get it done on long courses. We still have plenty of weights left. Let's do strokes gained distribution. We want upside. So let's do +3, +4, +5. 5 on each one of these. So that'll give us basically 15 weights on upside. And then let's go back to scoring here. Let's do fantasy points gained. This is going to help Wyndham Clark. I know that. We'll put 15 there. I'm getting pretty freaky here. We've got 22 left. The other thing we could do is we could use Andy's correlated courses. So maybe that's what we'll do. If we want to do course history, we'll do the correlated courses and Vidanta Vallarta. All right, so we'll do Punta Cana, Kapalua, and Mexico, Vidanta Vallarta. So we'll put 8 there. What does that give us? It gives us 2 more for each. We'll put 7 on Kapalua, 7 on Punta Cana. All right, let's see what we got here. We have, to no one's surprise, Jon Rahm is the #1 player in the model, and by a pretty decent gap. So his value is 91. Which is 7 points better than Tony Finau. Gary Woodland's at 83. So 84 for Finau, 83 for Woodland, and then another pretty decent gap. So Rahm 1, Finau 2, Woodland 3, Grillo 4, yeah, Griffin 5, Lanto, Patrick Rogers is 6th, Steven Yeager is 7, and pray for me, Luke List is number 8. Wyndham Clark is number 9, Alex Smalley is number 10. So despite, oh boy, man, this is going to be a bloodbath, right? I mean, I'm just trying to see who else shows. Augusto Nunez, 19th, $7,000. It's pretty good. Just kind of looking through some of these other guys that we might have talked about. Man, all right, well, very interesting. That was a pretty freaky model. We put a lot of weights all over the place. Still no surprise to see Jon Rahm and Tony Finau show up on top. Woodland is interesting, right? Like, I like Woodland. He's just such a bad putter, but can we get a little bit of Paspalum putt luck? Boy, because I wouldn't mind that. I think he still has the upside to win compared to a lot of his peers. Lanto is 5th. Yikes. That's wild. Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep trucking away here. Live show Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Rick Run Good YouTube channel. Betting preview on Tuesday. Continue to rock it out. Good luck. Talk to you guys soon.